In this video we're going to take you through step by step some of the saving options. So I'm just going to start by opening up Word, and then I'll open and access just an existing file that I've got that we can play around with a little bit. As you might have seen already, when you open up Word, a list of your recent documents will be listed on the left hand side, and don't forget you can actually pin those to a list if it's documents that you access on a frequent basis, just using the little drawing pin icon on the left hand side. So I've got my document here. Okay, I'm just going to remove those paragraphs, they get in the way a little bit, so Home tab, and there's the paragraph button, and I've got my document that I'm just going to use to play around with a little bit. Now I've opened this from a location on my network, and what I actually want to do is to put it on my computer at the moment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the Save As. Of course, if I click on Save, it will just update the file in its current location. Click on Save As, and I've got more options here. Don't forget, if you're part of a network, then you may see mapped network drives here on the left hand side. If you've got Office 365 subscribed to that, then you might have the OneDrive or other locations, SharePoint locations listed on the left. But if you just want to save it to your computer just like the good old days, then you've got the computer option on the left as well. In each of these different drives, as long as you've linked to them, you tend to have a folder structure. So I've got computer selected, but if you've got OneDrive or SharePoint, it might be that you can see commonly accessed folders on the right hand side here. And here I've got where the current folder is. So this is exactly where I found this particular document, but I might want to bring it into my own computer so that I can play around and update the document. I'm going to come back to this location actually. So on my recent folders, which is identical to the current folder, I'm just going to pin that so it locks that location and I don't have to go digging around my network for it. But for now I'm going to save as this on this computer, and I'm going to click Browse. So what I think I'll do, I'll keep things simple and I'll pop it onto my desktop. Now I'm using Windows 7 here. Principle's the same with Windows 8, Windows 10. It's going to bring up your Save As dialog. You've got your favourites on the left hand side. I'm going to pop onto the desktop there, and actually what I want to do is start working with a new folder. I've got a document that I want to open and customize and work on, and there's no particular subfolder I've got here, so I'm going to select New Folder at the top of the window there, or I could right click and go to New Folder, same way, and I'm going to call this Updating Manuals. Okay, so here we are, and I've got my file here. I'm just going to pop Work in Progress on that one, so I know it's not the final version. That's just my own little suffix on that. And of course I use the Save As to save that into a new folder on my computer. A nice keyboard shortcut is F12. If I press F12 on the keyboard, it takes me to the current folder that I'm in, and I could save it as something else or update the existing file and so on. Now what I want to do is make a couple of changes to this one and then compare it to the other one that I've got. I'm not going to go through the specific compare and merge tool because that comes later in another video, but I'm just going to place them side by side so I can view these from against each other, and then just look at the changes between the two. So if I go back to File and Open and click onto my computer, here I've got my recent folder. You can see my current folder. I'm going to access my recent folders, the one that I pinned, and I'm going to open up the Advanced Principles of Business Writing. Okay, and if I bring this down into the current window, you can see that I've got my Advanced Principles of Business Writing, and of course below that I've got my Work in Progress. So I can click on the View tab and arrange these documents. Now I can view side by side, which will put them side by side. Now you can't quite see because I've only cordoned off a section of the screen for recording, but you can just about see the right hand document over on the right hand side here. And when I scroll in my document, you might just about see that both of them are scrolling at the same time. I'm just going to reduce this window a minute. So what we've got is the option to synchronize scrolling. This is really handy, especially if you're checking two documents which are almost identical, maybe a couple of tweaks on each. Synchronous scrolling just allows you to scroll at the same time, so you can look from left to right and just compare the two documents there. And when you've had enough, you can take it out off side by side, and it'll take you back to where you were. If I drag down, you can see Advanced Principles underneath. So if you are sort of generally just comparing two documents, these view button here, viewing side by side, the synchronous scrolling, and then being able to reset the window position, this is quite handy because it just allows you to look from one to the other. You have got a couple of options as well. So I can create a new window, which is creating a new version of the current document that you've got open. So you get two of the identical file that you're working on. You can arrange your documents, which allows you to stack your windows if you want to see more than one at once. And if you've got more than two documents open, if you've got 3 or 4, then it'll arrange all of those onto your screen. It doesn't leave you with much room if you've got lots of files open, but that's exactly what it does. Now I'm going to stick with my work in progress. I'm going to get rid of my original document there. Okay, and with this document I'm just going to have a quick look at some saving options. So we've just looked at opening a couple of versions of almost the same document there. If I go back to the File tab, and I'm going to stick on my Info tab here. This is useful because it contains lots of properties of the file, and it allows us to perform quite a lot of actions relating to that particular document that we're working on. Now we can see the properties of the document here. It's not a massive file, 187 kilobytes. And it tells us how long we've been working on it and when it's last modified and who the author is and so on. Now if we're working on this document, then we might actually want to change some of this info. So we might want to remove the author or edit the author. In fact, if I right click on it, you can see a little window with information on this individual. So if they were stored as a contact, we can actually see information about that person. We could edit the property or open the contact card into Outlook. I'm just going to remove this person. So we don't see the author there, and something like this is quite handy if you're sending to an external, a customer maybe. We don't necessarily want to keep a lot of those properties on them. However, at the same time, we can add an author if we want to do that manually. So we can either select from an address book, which we've set up in Outlook, or we can simply type in the author name here. So when you're working with these, you can see, as we've seen, the size, how many pages there are, some information about the file, who's been working on the document at the same time. I'm going to remove Bob from my author list. And what I'm going to do actually, this is quite an important document and I don't want people opening it without permission. So I'm going to protect the document. Now there are ways and means of getting around this, so don't think that this is a high-tech security passworded file that can never be cracked. There are websites online which do the job, but so it's good as a deterrent for people. If I go over to protect document there, we've got encrypt with password. So if I select that and I'll type in a password, I'm going to click OK. It'll ask me to re-enter it, and as long as those passwords match, then we can see the document's protected. So I'm just going to close this and save, and if I go to File, Open Recent, my work in process document, work in progress even, and it'll ask me for my password. If I don't know it, of course it won't allow me in the document. So yeah, just to clarify, you know, there are ways and means around this, and certain programs that can be downloaded to get around this type of protection. But it's quite handy if you've got documents that you don't really want people to be able to use or you're working on at the moment. So it will discourage people from opening it. Let's try that again, and this time with the password, and we're in. The final thing we're going to look at are our auto recover options. When we're working on our documents, we must remember to save frequently, and of course we can do that manually just by clicking on the Save button or Control Save. We've all had it where we've worked with a Microsoft Office program, something's crashed or we've had a power cut, and when we open it up again we cross our fingers and hope that our work has been saved. In the background, Microsoft programs tend to do an auto recover, which allows you to automatically save at different intervals. So hopefully, even if there is a crash or a power cut, when you open up the program again, it will restore as much of the work as possible as it can, depending on the settings that you've applied. So if I go down to the Office Options category of the Backstage area, it'll bring up my Word options, and there's a whole category dedicated to saving. You can adjust how you save your documents, so which format is the most commonly used for you. You can specify the default location for when you are saving documents. If you don't necessarily want files to go straight into the Documents folder, if you've got a better one, then browse and set that as your default file location. Really handy. But just going back up again, you've got your auto recover information. So this allows Word to do a save every 10 minutes by default. So if it does crash, hopefully the most you're going to lose is 10 minutes worth of work. We've also got this option selected, which is quite new in the most recent versions of Word. It allows you to auto save a version even if we close without saving. So even if we say, okay, I've done my work, you click close, and then automatically when it asks you to save, you click no. That's when you hit your head and throw the screen out the window, but you can get around that. In the Backstage area, again, if I click on Manage Versions, you can recover unsaved documents. So if you've been working on a document for a considerable amount of time and you have closed it without saving, it should pop up in this area. Then you should be able to select it. You can see the date modified and the time, and it should recover as much information as possible again. So working with those auto recover options are just really a safety net. So if you're not saving manually and something does go wrong, hopefully Microsoft Word has saved that information for you. So just to review, we were looking at opening documents and using some of the view options where we arrange and view documents side by side. We looked at a couple of the basic properties of the file, including size and author. We added a password protection, and we just looked at some of the auto recover options when we're saving our document. Let's go back and take a look at some more tools in Word.